The next question in our JavaScript interview series is, what is the difference between null and undefined? In JavaScript, both null and undefined represent the absence of a value, but they are used in different contexts and have several differences. So the first difference is in their meaning and how they are used. So undefined means a variable has been declared but is not assigned a value yet. For example, when you declare a variable called as x, but simply do not assign it a value, when you print the value of x, you will get undefined. Pretty straightforward, right? We have declared a variable called x, but currently it does not have any value yet, so it results into undefined. But simply when you assign it a value, for example x equals to 20, now it will be replaced with undefined. Now the variable x no longer is undefined, but simply we do have a value yet. So this is variable declaration, and when you do not provide it a value, it will result into undefined. Okay, so this is the first meaning and this is the first usage. Now what about null? Well, null is an explicit assignment indicating no value or empty. So null represents when you want to have a variable but you simply want to have no value for that variable. Yeah, you do not even want undefined, but you do not even want to leave it empty. So that's why you explicitly set it to a no value variable using this null. So when you say let y, and when you just do this, you are going to get you will get undefined, right? But no, you do not want undefined. You explicitly want to declare a variable, but you do not want it to have any value yet. So you just say at this point in this code base at line 136, the value of y will be null. So it's empty. It's just like a box, but it does not have a value yet. So when you save it, you get null. Now this is not the answer of the question. So the answer of this question will be in a large explanation. So what is the default state? So variables are undefined by default if not initialized, and null must be assigned intentionally. Now you can ask me that, okay, but isn't null and undefined both same? Like why can't we do the same thing that we did here? Do we really have to say null? See, when you say undefined, then the value of x is deliberately set to undefined. It has a value. It is simply not defined yet, okay? Like, it's just like, yeah, in your mind, it does have a value. It's undefined. But when you say y, it's literally empty. You can fill anything right here. Well, you can fill anything right here as well, but it is undefined. The engine knows that it is undefined, but here the engine knows that we do have a variable called as y, but it is simply null. It does not have any value yet. Okay, now we also have a difference of type. So when you say type of, you can use this type of operator to check the type of a variable, a value. When you set type of undefined, you get undefined, and when you set type of null, you will get object. You see, you get object. Now this is a historical bug in JavaScript. I have discussed about this term, why does type of null brings you this object as output in my longer JavaScript course. So yeah, do make sure to watch that. But yeah, this is a very simple difference between null and undefined. Okay, now let me give you a clear clarity between null and undefined. Now you can ask me, tell me, like, why to use null and not undefined, and why to use undefined and not null? So the simple question is, hey, why should we use null, or why should we use undefined? And also, when should we use null and when should we use undefined? Like, I'm really confused. Both of these are similar. I am still unable to understand when to use which one. Now this is a very great question, and you can expect this question from your interviewer. So the choice between null and undefined, tell this to your interviewer. So the choice between using null and undefined depends on the intent and convention. So let me give you a clear breakdown of when to use each with practical examples. So when to use undefined. So you know that when a variable exists but hasn't been assigned a value yet, then JavaScript automatically sets it to undefined. It is clear. So if you say let user response will be undefined. Pretty clear. So this is when you need to use undefined. Okay, so this is when you use undefined, when you just have a variable but it does not have a value yet. Another use case of undefined is when you have a function parameter but it does not have any value yet. So let me copy this code from another code editor. So here I have a very simple function greet. We have a name, console.log name. Now we just called this greet function but we did not pass any argument to this name parameter. Now we are going to have undefined. So this is a clear misuse of a variable declaration without assigning it a value. I just said misuse, but this is not a misuse. You can do it deliberately. This is no problem here because you are eventually doing code for fun. This is not a serious function, so this is not a heinous crime to do in programming. But yeah, when you do this does not make sense, but you can do it. Okay, so this is when you have missing function arguments. Now you can ask me that, okay, but why was no argument passed? Well, because you somehow want to skip the argument. So when you skip the argument, then by default name will be undefined. Okay, so this is a very simple example of when to use undefined. The third example is when you have non-existent object properties. So for example, when you have this code, so when you try to access a property that doesn't exist, it will simply return you undefined. So you have const user equals to id1. You are trying to access user with this age data. So this user object does not have any age property, so it will result into undefined. See, this is not resulting into an error. This is simply giving you undefined. In other programming languages, it would have resulted in an error. But in JavaScript, we do not have this functionality. It doesn't result into an error. That's why TypeScript was built. We'll talk about TypeScript pretty much little bit later. For this, to counter this, we have TypeScript. But anyway, this is the use case of null defined. Now, this is the use case of undefined. Now, when to use null? Null should be used as per developers' intentional choices. For example, when you want to explicitly clear a value in future, for example, this code, look at this code, let cart equals to, by the way, let me write this null. Okay, let cart equals to apple and banana. Now when you want to clear this cart and you just want to have a clear cart, nothing in it, you can simply say, hey, now cart equals to null. And now when you say cart, you will see that now cart is empty. See, but now you can have did some mishaps there. Okay, 1 2. Now you can see that now our array is back on its feet, 1 2. Okay, so this is a real use case of null. We have a cart, we emptied it using null, and now we again inserted some new value to this cart variable, cart array. So now the question is why. Now here it clearly communicates. So the developer clearly communicates that, hey, in future I want to clear the cart, so I can use that using this null data. You can simply use this null data type and then you are okay with it. Okay, so this is now done empty on purpose. Another use case can be API call. You can use null to indicate intentional absence. So here you have API response id equals to 1 and address equals to null. So here you are deliberately not providing undefined, but you are providing null. That means that we do not have any data. It's not undefined. No, we are not even providing an undefined data. We are simply providing that, hey, there is not even any data. Again, you can ask me why, because it differentiates not provided with undefined. So if you don't have to provide it, then you undefined. Like this, undefined. But if you provide as empty, then you use null. Okay. Another example is when you are doing DOM operation. So let me copy this code from another code editor. When you have const element document.getElement by id ghost, but when you say const element, this will bring you null. If you do not have an element that has this id associated with it, it will simply return you an error. It says document is not defined. Well, because again we do not have an HTML page, that's why we are having this error, document simply very simple, document is not defined. But if you do this in a web browser, should I do this? Well, somehow I'm unable to show you this. Okay, so if I show you this, Now I can see it says const element equals to document.get element by adding host console.log element, it brings you null. Okay, so this is the problem here. So this is the difference between null and undefined. One is done deliberately and the other is set to null deliberately, so that we can simply tell the JavaScript engine that hey, null simply means null. That's it.